I've spent almost 3 decades in my current job, and somewhere along the way, I started telling folks, I'm burnt out, I'm tired, or I think it's time for me to do something else. It just felt like the right thing to say at the time. Saying I was burnt out sounded like I'm a strong, in control guy. The environment is just having an impact on me. Saying you're burnt out sounds temporary or fixable, something that you can remedy by changing your job title or moving on to another profession or something like that. Depression? That's not a word men, particularly men in the field that I'm in, use very often. Over the last several years, I've come to the realization that sometimes what we call burnout is not burnout at all. If you're in midlife and you're burdened by the years of carrying the responsibilities of managing your home and work life, dealing with the stress and all the expectations that come with that, knowing the difference between burnout and depression can be pretty powerful. There were seasons in my career where I was exhausted even before my workday was over. The tasks blended together. The paperwork never seemed to stop. I started feeling like no matter what I did, the work never ended. The piles just kept growing bigger. But the thing about that is, during those phases of my work life, I was always able to sort of recharge when I was away from work. Getting away from work was great. Weekends, vacations, time with my family. What I've just described to you is much more like burnout than anything else. And I think that's pretty common. Burnout is usually tied to a role or to whatever thing you have going on at work. It's a constant demand on your energy. Burnout drains your tank, but time away from your job works to refill that, and it's effective. Over the last several years, I feel as though I've gotten to a place where those things outside of work aren't necessarily filling my tank as much. I think a lot about work. I stress a lot about work. I worry about doing enough at work. Days off don't help as much anymore because I'm always thinking about work when I'm off. I love spending time with my family, but I find myself thinking about work more and really more and more about the stress that work brings on. The feeling of stress and unhappiness started coming home with me from work. This is the simplest way that I can explain this to you. Burnout is when you're tired of what you do. Depression is when you're tired of life. Like I said, burnout is mostly work related. You find yourself at work, you're still going to laugh sometimes. You get home, you get some rest. There's some relief with that. Frustration with work, sort of a dominant theme. Depression, everything feels heavy. Motivation sort of disappears, and you find that first at work, but in other phases of your life. Joy is hard to find. Things that you used to really enjoy doing, they don't have that same regenerative feeling anymore. You don't enjoy them as much anymore. You find yourself getting plenty of sleep, but you're just not rested. These may be indications of depression. I don't want to get too grim here, but if you ever find yourself asking, what's the point? If you find yourself not wanting to get up out of bed in the mornings, you could really use some professional help. There's folks out there that can help you. These may not be signs of burnout, but signs of a bigger problem. So what is it about us, men in particular, that causes us to miss these things? Men are trained to endure. Whatever it is that's bugging us, we just have to deal with it and move past it, right? Some careers, this is much more of an issue than others, but for most of us, it's very pervasive. You don't tell your friends, hey man, I'm really struggling. You just say, I'm tired. You don't say, man, I'm hurting. You just say, work's been tough this week. What we do up here is we translate these emotional issues into words that we can communicate without admitting that we have something really, really troubling going on. And why do we do that? Well, because if we admit that something is wrong, it's going to feel like we're a failure. And we certainly can't be that, can we? You know, I have found that what's helped me is not one thing, not one aha moment. It was small, honest steps. These small, honest steps, talking to folks instead of isolating myself, being honest and taking my mental health seriously was another one. Building some routines outside of work, accepting that sometimes strength means reaching out for help and taking it when you can find it. You know, my job over the years has taught me how to respond to crisis, but it hasn't taught me anything about dealing with my own issues. In midlife, the things I'm doing now are teaching me more about myself. If you're watching this and you're wondering, am I burned out? Am I depressed? If you're exhausted, ask yourself this. And maybe you don't know because you're not getting it. And if you're not, work really hard at getting a good night's rest. Do that and ask yourself, do I feel better? Do I feel rested? If you do, there's a really good chance that you're just dealing with some burnout. If rest doesn't help you, then you might be carrying something a bit heavier than just burnout. And if you are, you don't have to do it alone. Midlife is not the end of who you are. Sometimes midlife is the first time that you stop long enough to figure out who you actually are. If you're a man trying to navigate midlife and trying to do it intentionally, consider subscribing. That's what this channel is all about. Hope you found something of use in this. I'm excited about where this channel is going. And if you see fit, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.